It is 5:30 p.m. and I'm calling to order this regular meeting of the Fargo Board of Education. Please join and stand us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I will now look for approval of our agenda. Greg?
Yeah, I move approval of our agenda with the human capital addendum and also moving item 6I, memo 116, from consent to business.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Greg and a second from Ally. Any conversation? Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposition, same sign. And that motion passes 9-0. Next, we are moving along to recognition of the audience. We don't have anyone signed up this evening, so we will move along to our reports. And Laura is with us this evening, but is not going to be sharing anything. So thank you so much for joining us as usual. Appreciate having you here. And then I'll turn it over to Dr. Steiner.
All right, thank you very much. And before we get to the safety committee, I'll give my report, and then they'll prepared to be wowed by a group that has done some really wonderful work. So some congratulations, Travis Hackey, Fargo South High School economic and psychology teacher. He finished the modern classroom project. We have a whole group of people at Fargo South doing this. So he was the latest one to finish. The U.S. Presidential Scholars semifinalists. Davies had two, David Ha and Braden Lee, and Fargo North had one, Eleanor Iverson. So I have about 160 kids nationwide, 3 from our district. Fargo North's forensic coach, Markesia Bashir, was recognized as a Diamond Key Award winner, and that's for national speech and debate. And then just some extracurriculars, state qualifiers. Fargo South High School baseball team is qualified for the state tournament this weekend. Davies softball and soccer qualified for the state tournaments. And then I was going to list all the track accomplishments, but didn't want to miss anyone. So out of all of our teams, Davies finished 5th in the boys and the girls. So we also had multiple state champions. So if you have a chance to take a look at those. For the administrative side, we held our last alternative pathway meeting last week. Again, we did that through the Seek Innovation Grant. We are currently going to take a group out next October with those grant funds to see Lindsay Unified School District. Have about 8 people that are interested in attending that. In June, I will be bringing you a board summary so you can hear all the different things that occurred and were talked about. So we'll have kind of an overall alternative pathway conditions for what we mean by alternative. And then also by level and then by building. So everybody kind of has their own plan on what it's going to look like. I'm really excited about the work they did and where it could really impact kids in the future. Grading and reporting. Think back to the 14 listening sessions Dr. Gross and I did earlier this year. I'm not sure I thought we'd still be engaging in these conversations, but I'm glad we have been. Communications went out to all secondary teachers today with the new plan. We're also creating a frequently asked question document. And then we also have a summary document, which includes everything kind of from a 30,000-foot view to some new terminology, to some elimination of some terminology. Not a lot of time to get feedback, but so far I've had just a few responses of people that have been appreciative of the changes that have been made. Really good work, lots of spirited debate in a good way. And ultimately, I think the part I'm happiest about is we settled on the idea that grades are about what a student is able to do and not able to do, and then how we as educators can help them and how we can work with parents to do the same. So I like where we're going with that. It certainly probably won't be the exact same product in a year from now, as I'm sure we'll continue to make adjustments, but with any good system, that's what we should do. Just a reminder, strategic planning, if you have feedback for me, to make sure you either set up a time or give me some of that feedback. The cabinet met with Dr. Slavic for planning our session in June, which is June 9th. It'll be, again, a lot of directors, principals, and then we're also asking them to bring their assistant principals for those that have them, because they will start getting into their own building plan. There's an 8-step process, which seems like a lot, but it was really 3 steps with a bunch of communication. We'll be spending time in those 3 steps, identifying their critical objectives. The other thing I really liked is they put a big focus on a pre-mortem. And so they actually said, once you figure out what your critical objective is and you start naming your strategies, you really look hard at what could go wrong. And so everything of like, oh, we don't communicate it well. So then you start taking into account those things that you should be doing before you start doing. And I like that approach. And then also the other big piece is going to be, how will we know it looks and is successful? So as we go throughout the year and then as we get to the end of the year. So looking forward to that. And then the last thing is I shared with board members a summary of the 6th assignment. If you had a chance to read through that, ultimately what you saw was a really strong focus on additional periods of intervention, more support outside of what was before school or the last period of the day. There was a big need for assessment completion. So when a student is gone and misses that test, often for them to track down their teacher to find a place to test, that can be a lot for an educator to deal with and handle while still trying to continue teaching in their classroom. And so now it's going to be around departments helping out and taking on some of that work. They were really clear on the data they're going to collect. So multiple times throughout next year, we'll have data to collect and say, is this working and is it not? We do plan on meeting a few times next year to check in and see where we're at. I like the idea of, again, expanded help, but moving the dates and the times. And ultimately what that meant is, if Fargo South says this period doesn't work, then let's find a period that does. Some of the other ones said, well, we always did an 8th hour and that seemed to work. But then they started looking and said the need was 6th and 7th hours. So how do we find a way to staff the hours where kids are available and it doesn't come down to transportation, it doesn't come down to extracurriculars? So they built that. And the other part that we believe can happen, and we're really pushing hard on people this, is to actually now protect the prep time of our teachers. So often what happens is teachers have really big hearts. And so if the kid says, can I just come in during your prep time and work? They're always saying yes to that. With this process, what we're hoping is that we can actually put out office hours for teachers and say, nope, this is protected. They're going to plan, they're going to do the things they need to do as a teacher. And the other time that they have, you can go to the other Algebra 1 teacher, even if that's not the one you're currently with. And I think that eventually could lead to more time to plan than they currently have without adding more time to plan. So felt good about the meetings, feel good about the final product, and I think we have something good. And even some this year, we already had groups at the school starting elements of it and doing things and brainstorming and troubleshooting. So I feel good about where we're at, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it gets implemented next year. So that's it for me.
Are we ready to move on then? Yep. Okay. So then next I will look for approval of our consent agenda. Oh, wait a minute. No, sorry. We have the safety committee. Whoops.
I'd like to welcome our safety committee up for the presentation. We have a large safety committee that meets every month, and we're starting to get into a rhythm of different topics that need to be covered every year, which we have the report that we gave you. Now we'll just highlight the report for you. And then I had a few brave volunteers who said that they're willing to present and help design the presentation. Not everyone can be with us tonight, but Trish Miller from South, Julie Hetland, who has been at Clara Barton Hawthorne for many years, has now just moved into a new position at, I would say, adult ed there. And I guess what I want to emphasize is we have such a variety of teachers, admin assistants, and different positions on the committee. Sarah Bratlin from Lincoln, Kirsten Hansen from Ben Franklin, Josh Smith, who is our coordinator of safety, myself, and then Jen Saar, our coordinator of learner support services. So tonight we will just take you through and answer any questions you have regarding this committee. So Trish, I'll let you start off.
Thank you. I'm Trish Miller. This is my 3rd year coming here to present on safety committee. It is a committee that I fully believe in. Excited to do the work every year, and also very excited to come and present on, which is a weird thing for a lot of people to think. Definition of safety. We introduced this to you 3 years ago, and we are still using this definition. A cultural prevention that protects youth and adults from natural hazards or human actions that may cause physical and or psychological harm or affect one's ability to function in school. We use this definition to plan, to organize, to look through initiatives. We use this as our lens every time we get together during safety committee. This definition is not only a holistic approach for our students, for our staff and adults that are part of Fargo Public Schools as well. Safety is a whole. Safety is not one or the other. And this definition allows us to look at all of the facets of safety. We do exist to proactively address challenges. We also look through challenges and events that have happened and problem solve those as well. Our main goal is to be proactive. I'm not going to read this to you. There's a lot of words. This is an important slide. Look at all the things we did. These are our meetings. These are our topics. These are the things that we come together to discuss through the lens of safety. We maybe don't take action on every single one, but the amount of material that our safety committee believes impacts our students and staff and how we can go about as a committee to work through them, problem solve, to offer suggestions. It's a big list. It's very important to shine. I move on.
Couple things we want to highlight. We've worked really closely with our partners at Valley Bus and have made some big improvements this year. We have given them the ability now to not only scan in with badge readers, but also add keypads to the buses to really increase the student sign-on as they're getting on and off the buses. And we've increased our number of paras that are riding the bus to also support those drivers with behaviors. We are giving access to our staff with some new technology to allow the office admin to see who is on the bus in real time and check that attendance and have better access to those records, as well as working with them to have a more formalized process to request video when incidents do happen. One thing we can't stress enough is the importance of the Here Comes the Bus app. This app is really, really crucial for families to be able to see what's happening with the bus. They can see in real time what's going on with their student and where they're at as well. So we'll continue to push this, but this is a great tool to get out to our families. As it comes to school safety, a couple things that we've made some improvements on this year is we've created a classroom safety checklist now. This is a tool that we are putting out into our staff's hands. It gives them the ability in their classroom and in their building to really take a refresh at the start of the year, familiarize themselves with what safety things they have in their classroom as well as in their building. We've been working on training and developing our model for improving our risk assessment process as well. Our recommendations as we work through that is to upgrade our threat assessment process to a more inclusive risk assessment process. We understand that when we focus on a threat, it is very specific or direct, and there's a miss when we need to step back and look at things in a larger scale of risk. We are looking at improving ways that we can communicate the trainings and the things that we're doing with our parents, including bringing that communication out in different languages. We are working to transition into our own version of a standard response procedures as we move away from what was branded as Alice. And also working to answer the ask from staff, which is to help them bring a little more scenario and realism to some of their drills. So we will be working with our building's emergency response teams to bring a little more scenario and direction to them to help them meet and discuss their monthly drills. And we're also looking to improve some of our emergency equipment, like our office emergency go bags. A couple things we've done this year with professional development. We've hosted some active shooter training for our staff in the fall. And we will be looking to bring that into a professional development day at the start of the year for all buildings to make sure that that's not a gap that's happening for our staff. We're also taking the responses those teachers are submitting. I think we had about 1,600 of those completed this year in our first try. We're taking that data and putting it into our site safety audits as we're going through each building to make sure we're not missing anything at the front level, as well as working with them to monitor, like we always do, their building drills and completion and make sure that they're getting everything done they need to by the end of the year.
Right, so a couple of professional development recommendations from the committee. Continuing to evaluate and support our ongoing training needs, specifically things like CPR, first aid, stop the bleed. These are things that are helpful for a lot of our staff to be trained in different parts of the school. When I think about Ben Franklin alone, we have a FIED department that's on one end and the nurse's office is on the other. So how can we increase the amount of training that is available for staff? Because we feel like that would be good for all. Other pieces here, providing professional development to building level staff to really reinforce the expectations around classifying a behavior as a minor versus a major. This leans into some of the code of conduct work. And with a new student management system and Infinite Campus, there are going to be some new pieces to learn as far as entering that data. And then adopting a structured or multi-year professional development cycle for safety training so that we're making sure to offer those different trainings in a way that makes sense for when we need them. Oops. Some key improvements from the school year. We did complete year 2 of implementing the Code of Character, Conduct, and Supports. One of the things that the safety committee identified kind of earlier in the fall was that there was a little bit of a gap in documenting behavior reports depending on level. So elementary school was doing that a little bit different than middle school, et cetera. And so we have some next steps for that. But reporting protocols were really brought to the combined principal meeting and was something that we discussed and did some collaboration and alignment on as an outcome of the committee recommendation to bring that there.
All right, so just to kind of conclude this section, one of the pieces that we'll continue to do, it's something that we have been doing over time, is just to continue to look at that behavior reporting data by level. Sometimes we can get that PK-12 perspective, which is important, but then also to break it down by each of our levels. And then continuing to just be as transparent and as consistent as we can be in our communication out to staff and our expectations in terms of how we are analyzing that information in order to make the most informed decisions as we move forward. You read and heard earlier that we look at a lot of data in the safety committee, and one of those pieces is the climate and culture survey, and we've just wrapped that up for this current school year. We've had some shifting of that survey over the last handful of years. This is the first time that we're administering it just one time per year at the spring of each year. Trying to be mindful of survey fatigue and trying to make sure that we're getting responses after our students and caregivers have all been well embedded and involved in their schools. And so these are two pieces of data that we pull out of the climate and culture survey. The first one being that belonging question of I feel like I belong. And that links directly back to the strategic plan as well, where we are aiming to improve students' perception of belonging, or that feeling of belonging in their school by about 2% every year. So when you take a look at where we've been, we didn't fully make that 2% this year. We missed it by just a slim margin, but awfully close. And so we're feeling good about where the things that we have been implementing and then where we're continuing to go in that process. And so we'll continue to have ongoing conversation about that. The second question really comes out of the safety committee, and that is at the elementary, the question of I I am safe at school, slightly worded differently at secondary, where it's I feel safe at school. So again, we're maintaining a level there that is pretty high, but certainly room for us to continue to have conversations about how can we keep moving that needle for our students and how they're feeling about their perception of safety moving into upcoming school years. We also survey our caregivers, and again, that has just concluded in this spring. And the safety committee has historically looked at these two questions that caregivers respond to. One of the things I'd like to note, just what you can see on the screen, is we've had this declining number of responses from our caregivers over the last 3 years. And I think that's something that we have had started some conversation about, but also really trying to identify, how can we do this differently? What's another way? Is it a survey? Is it a different format? Is it a time of the year? All the pieces that we still have to have more conversation on. So you can see that we are only about half of the responses that we received last year. So just under 500 responses. And again, this is PK-12 caregivers over a series of months to complete. But again, that looking through the caregiver lens of how do they understand through their own interactions or their conversations with their child about that feeling of belonging for that student through this question of my child has at least one advocate in the school. And while that overall trend could be a little bit disheartening on that question, I also think, right, we're starting to see a little bit of shift from last year's significant dip. So again, those are pieces that we have to continue working on and ask our buildings to continue having those conversations about what do those conversations look like between caregivers and our staff, and what messages might their children also be bringing home from the school day. And then that fourth graph being our school provides a safe learning environment. And again, that one is a nice slow but steady upward trend that we are happy to see continue to grow, a little bit down from last year, but that overall trend heading in the right direction of providing that safe learning environment. In the middle school and the high school survey at the end, there are also 3 open-ended questions. And so what you're seeing on this screen now are those 3 questions in the blue headings. And then what you're seeing is a summary of all of their responses for the top 5 themes that came out. And so as a safety committee, we looked at the top 20 themes, but just paring it down a little bit for you to take a look at the top 5 in terms of what middle school students like most about their schools, what they like least, and a suggestion that they have for their school. In that most column, it's so great to see so many of our kids who responded, provided some feedback, love being involved in their school, whether that's through extracurriculars or whether that's the feeling that they have by being with the staff members in the school. And so much of what we are anchoring our work to in the safety committee really comes shining through on those top 5 themes. Then you can see, right, every year it's lunch, people. Every year, lunch is number 1. So that continues to be an area that is not most favored by our students, and often then, as you can see in the suggestion, comes up at the top as well as a potential suggestion. Aside from that, moving into more of those senses of belonging and safety, good pieces for us to look at, and certainly something that we are encouraging, and you'll see all of our buildings to take a deep dive into their individual data. This is all of the middle schools combined together, but important for each middle school and then each high school, which you're seeing now on your screen, to have those same conversations. You can see a lot of carryover, a lot of similarities from our middle school themes into our high school themes in all 3 of the columns. Although there are some differences just as the structure of the school day is different, the types of things that they maybe are involved with, and the conversations that they might be having across all of their courses. That cell phone policy, was something that bubbled up across the board too, and recognizing that those pieces are going to come up here, and not always in our local control for those pieces. So again, as we think about moving away, we recognize that belonging really is the foundation for for the safety committee. If you feel safe in school, you feel like you belong in your school. And so that's why we continue to have such a tremendous emphasis on that, not just the safety questions, but also the belonging question as part of this committee's work. And so it's important for us to continue digging into those responses. This is the first year as well that we have switched the students' climate and culture survey into a different platform, so that as a district in each of our buildings, we can look at the different types of student responses. So we can look by grade level, we can look by gender, we can look by race. In our previous platform, that was much, much, much more difficult to do. So we encourage all of our buildings to really spend some time to take a look at their results and for any themes across some of the demographic groups, as well as then digging into those open-ended questions with student leadership teams at the middle school and high school.
We are not done as a safety committee. We will continue. I will probably be back next year. We are very committed to continue to serve in an advisory role, supporting the schools here in maintaining safe, inclusive, responsive learning environments. We are ongoing with our data review, we are collaborating, we are thoughtful in our recommendations, and we remain committed to addressing the evolving safety needs of students, staff, and families across the district. If you would, creating that safety culture that comes with the constant review, tweaking, listening, and decision-making of safety. Thank you. Open it up to questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. Ally?
Okay, I've got a few written down, so I will try to be brief. First one is, I know we talked about this, but like Bismarck presented it when we had our state school board convention, but why did we as Fargo decide to go away from the ALICE program?
There's a significant cost that comes with that, being very budget minded. ALICE is a version of a standard response procedure. We've seen other local districts do the same. It was a great foundation for us when we transitioned into that world of standard response procedures, but at the time when it was selected, that was a great launching point. We've had time to kind of get that ingrained into our culture now, and transitioning into a standard response procedure doesn't change much, but it removes a brand that we're paying a lot of money for. So
Awesome. Thank you for that, Josh. I appreciate it. So we heard when we met actually with the state legislators that the phone policy actually helped reduce some fights and gossip and things like that throughout the school day. Are you guys also getting that same feedback as at the safety level? I know we saw some of that as part of the feedback from the high school, middle school, and the feedback, but
To be honest, I think kids are resourceful and they have found other ways to communicate at times. So PLDs, specifically like shared Google Docs, Google Slideshows, we've seen a lot more of that, as well as an increase in flagged emails through the help desk. But I would say that the social media, like the drama that happens on the weekend and the Snapchat pieces coming into the school, has been significantly less. Like, we are not seeing video of altercations or screenshots of back and forth conversations that are happening outside of school in school as much.
And a little bit in a secondary piece on that phone is I know Officer Nielsen at Fargo South had brought this up as a concern, is that they had a text the cop line available at Fargo South for, those types of situations. Did we ever find something to help overcome that where students have a quick line to the resource officers?
We also have a text-to-tip line directly to Officer Horner at our school. I know at the beginning of the year, he and our Dean of Students went classroom to classroom and actually did a presentation on school safety, social media, just tech use in general, and Officer Horner gave out his email address. So students would be able to email from their school-issued device to his school email if needed. But I'm not sure, like large scale, if that happened at other schools.
So just a replacement of the texting to the email? Okay.
The same thing happened within South. We did do the more of a campaign of the email. We were talking about how could it get embedded in Canvas? How could these kids get more of a text-to-tip that way? But the last that I heard, it just didn't get partnered up together and as well as we had hoped. And so the email campaign was huge.
Okay. Thank you for that piece. And again, maybe just something to continue to kind of iterate on too, because I know that specifically in my conversations with Officer Nielsen, he had really expressed that that was something that was very, very valuable in helping the school resource officers know exactly where to be engaged. The last two are kind of similar in terms of anti-vaping. I know that we just installed them at Ben Franklin, but I saw on the high school one that that was one of the recommendations. Do we not have anti-vape technologies in all of our high schools at this time?
That was one of the concerns brought up with kids, is that vaping is still happening. We do have vape sensors. We did a pretty big project just completed within the last couple weeks to put vape sensors in all 3 of our middle schools as well. So all secondary buildings do have them now. Activations still continue though, but it is a good way to get staff going to that area to try and figure out what's causing that. So.
Okay. And then we just obviously recently saw this happen at Moorhead Middle School, but in terms of substance prevention, there was gummies passed out at school. And I don't know, I saw obviously like medication administration and different trainings, but do we have any kind of training that we have looked at it from a safety perspective on that kind of prevention for our staff or detecting those kinds of things happening?
Yeah, no, I don't know that we have done anything specifically around that. We have partnered and continue to partner with Fargo Cass Public Health. And we're also in our efforts to really promote kind of that peer-to-peer education, have been partnering around just more like drug awareness and substance use, abuse, things like that. But I don't know if it has gotten quite as specifically, Ally, as what you're
Yeah, I'm
mentioning.
just thinking more of like even like a staff training, like of being able to look like notice those things or be aware of some like detect symptoms and things like that, just kind of that kind of thing.
Yeah, the only other thing that I'll say, and this is just on the fringe, it certainly, again, doesn't get as specific as what you're looking for, is in our back to school training, right? For all of our staff, anytime we're talking about mental health, we do our required training and mandated reporter. Those are pieces that are embedded into that, kind of where it fits, but not a just specific standalone training. And I don't know if anybody else has anything else to add to that, but.
And just as something to maybe consider or take a look at, and is that becomes a little bit more prevalent and we see it popping up more and more often. So thank you guys. Thank you for the presentation and for the report. And I'm done with all my questions now.
All right, sounds good. Nikki?
I only have 2, so hang in there. The first one, I think, Josh, you had mentioned office emergency go bags. I'm intrigued. Does that mean there is an emergency in the office and you grab something and go? Or is that for training? You grab that bag and then take and do the training?
Yeah, so we have very large bags that currently exist in most of our offices. They are so large and so stocked full of supplies and equipment that they're not realistically manageable to grab and go for every drill and take out of the building. So we're looking at a way to reduce that and figure out what's really necessary. We're being mindful of the fact that all of our teachers are taking their red buckets with them, which also are all full of emergency supplies. Is it necessary for the office to bring 30 ice packs out with them? Just how can we clean that up and be a little more efficient and give them something that's easier to grab, like a backpack, and just go with some basic first aid supplies. But it's also where they would keep everything like their class attendance rosters and other information. That way they have that when they're outside and maybe not with the computer in front of them.
Okay, that's awesome. Thanks. I'm glad I asked. The second question anybody can take, there was a mention that there was a difference in reporting for behaviors between elementary and middle schools. And I'm interested to know more about that. Are the forms similar? Are they different? Is it a matter of time, teachers, access?
Yeah, I think just different systems. So the form is the same and looks the same regardless of level. I think elementary schools, in that a student is in one classroom every day, have had other areas where they are tracking some behaviors. So they're still tracking them, but it's maybe in a Google form or a Google sheet that the teacher is inputting all of that information and then finding a way to make sure that that gets transferred to middle school with the transition of a student from 5th grade to sixth grade, because we then look in the behavior reports. And so it was more so of just making sure how we're tracking our data and using that behavior reporting form is the same to really support that transitional period from elementary to middle and middle to high school, so that we can have an accurate representation of just the interventions that have really happened, so that we know what's maybe been effective or not.
Yeah, and then I think I would add another piece of that as we were cross-referencing our behavior reports with our suspension information. One of the pieces over the course of this past summer that was acknowledged is we would have suspensions and students out for 2-3 days, but there would not be a corresponding behavior report. So to be able to crosswalk those to try to identify what types of things might be happening in order to help us plan, that piece was missing. And so it is, I think, a variety of things. Those are a few.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll just add, Nikki, that developmentally appropriate. So if we have the use of a disparaging comment from a first grader, that is very different than from a seventh grader. And so sometimes it is, they don't even know what they're saying, they're copying someone. And so I just wanted to make sure we understand that we do use age appropriate as we go forward through that. So that's where some differences could be too.
Just an observation and then a question for somebody who's been here a long time. Thank you for all your work. It seems like it's been happening longer than 3 years, and so I'll ask a question at the end. But you're talking about staff and student and community with internal impacts, but also external threats. Is that a fair statement? Maybe 8 years ago, there was a concern about student behaviors in classrooms. And there was a committee created after negotiations about a safety committee. Is this the evolution of that safety committee? I'm seeing a lot of nodding. And was that 8 years ago? 10 years ago?
I think it was 7
Okay.
years, and this is the same committee. What happened was I felt we started off to be a very reactive committee, and we were reacting to maybe the highest concern. And we're starting to really establish a proactive way of looking at sets of data, research, how things fit together. And for that, I am just very proud of this committee. I feel like we have used our meetings well. We even have talked about reducing by 2 meetings because we're getting it down to, if you look at the in your report, what we go monthly, we need to cover those topics every year now. We didn't have anything to go off of our first couple of years. So it has taken 7 years to get to this point. So I depend on this committee to review the emergency plans, the handbooks for each of the levels. And so like the safety checklist. So there's some things that we need to do yearly to make sure they're updated. It's a really nice sounding board because of the diversity of the committee that we don't have on other committees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in closing, I would say I appreciate the evolution. I also commend former negotiations teams that really did get this off the ground. This goes back to, I say it again and again, our kids can't learn if they don't feel like they're safe or they are not safe. And so thank you for your efforts and your continued work on this.
Melissa?
Yeah. So I thought that I saw a slide that Infinite Campus will have reporting capabilities, and my question kind of reflects off of what Nikki was talking about, and I was just wondering if that will help kind of uniformly address reporting for all grades. And
I think one of the benefits is, and from what I have seen in the training modules within Infinite Campus, it's slightly different, like a lot of the same information, but just formatted a little bit differently and some different features. So we're all going to kind of be starting at the status quo of retraining everyone and how to do that and resetting expectations. And I think it's just a really great opportunity to reset how we do business as far as behavior reports.
Namal?
Well, first and foremost, I just want to say thank you for a thoughtful presentation. And I think a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, that's when you got here, or last year? Was it last year that you guys were here? Okay. So basically, you guys already know that I'm always looking for those improvement of safety. So I'm always curious, just wondering from all the data you guys presented regarding like the belonging for the students. And I'm just wondering, like, do you guys go back on those students who said, I feel like I do not belong there? Like I said, I'm always looking for those improvement and what you can approve, especially like if it's 87, what other can you do for those 20 or 20, whatever number it is, that you can approve it? That's what I was looking for. And I'm just wondering, what can you do in order for those students who said, I do not belong, and just trying to say, okay, you know what? We want to go back to these students who feel like they do not belong. What can we do in order for them to feel like they belong? So this way, this survey can go up higher. You see what I mean? So is there any like improvement that you can be able to do in order for that survey to go up, or for that parent who feel like some of the parents feel like their child have at least one adult advocacy at the schools and thing like that, just to make sure we have that that connection.
Right. I think you are asking an excellent question. And that's really, as a district, when we're looking at the climate and culture survey, it is that higher level broad view. In now our third year of the climate and culture, the current climate and culture survey, since last year to this year, so over the course of this school year, we have seen so many of our schools asking those same questions, but they're asking it of their students, and they're asking it of their caregivers of those students. So while as a district, we are not necessarily coming around that in the same uniform way, many of our buildings are doing that. Sometimes that looks like minute meetings with their counselors. Sometimes that has looked like some of our schools developing their own survey to try and dig a little bit deeper in terms of what is it that's maybe missing, or what could they capitalize on even more so, build upon some strengths that are already there. And so many of those pieces have also made their way into buildings' school improvement plans. And so not only are they asking the question, but they're saying, how can we also now develop a plan and some action steps around it? So while that is not necessarily something we're able to report out on, it's definitely happening at the school level. And I know Kirsten from Ben Franklin has another example that would be a great one to anchor to.
Yeah, so part of the I feel like I belong in my school, the problem with that question is it's a one-time survey that we're giving to students on a given day in the spring, and there are any number of things that could happen in a middle school that could impact a child's response to that question. And so we as a school have tried to identify some lagging indicators, some other data sets that are really truly driving that. If we're seeing an impact here, students must be feeling a higher level of belonging. So specifically, our counselors meet with every student at the beginning and end of the school year for what they call minute meetings. It's their way of identifying social emotional groups that may be helpful for students, but they also ask them, who is your trusted adult in our building? And we track that data. That has been shared with our parents and our community and our staff every week. We were above 90% of students coming into those fall meetings having identified a trusted adult, and we maintained those numbers through the end of the year. For any student who did not identify a trusted adult, we kept those names and actually put up a sign up in the staff lounge for people to adopt a child who needed a trusted adult, if you will, and really try to make a connection with a student on their team that didn't feel like they had an adult that they could go to. And so we do track and measure if those students who didn't identify a trusted adult at the beginning were able to identify someone at the end of the school year. Additionally, with the I feel like I belong at my school, that is an integral part of our school improvement plan. We track truancy in school or students who are skipping class. We've implemented an inclusive welcome at the start of all of our classes and every single period of the day to try to build that community piece. So I think each school tackles that a little bit differently, but every middle school certainly is working on increasing that belonging in different ways.
Thank you. One of the reason why I always feel like we should have those percentage is because I feel like all 9 of us can always look at those percentage, and sometimes we can always put in an input and give you the input too, to how can we be able to improve that? Because for me is I want to see that percentage, because if I see it and then maybe I can come up with some great idea that I can pass along to you, or any of 9 of us can be able to do that. That's why data are so important. Just as you know. Board member Greg, love to see those percentage, and data, and that's why, we can always see great improvements as well. So I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I just think that if we have a discussion on that, it's always great for a student to be able to hear that, and then also too for you to continue to do the work that you are doing. Thank you.
Okay, do we have Greg?
I have a qualitative question actually. So the code of conduct or character, conduct, and supports. I know that was like a very big lift that took a long time. And, we're 2 years into it now. A lot of high expectations, a lot of high hopes with that new document. I'm just curious what this committee feels, whether or not expectations were met. I saw in the presentation there's going to be some fine tuning or some modifications to that, but overall, has that been what it was supposed to be?
I will just share out from my administrative team. It has been incredibly helpful to really give a definition to, as well as like a choice board of where we can go depending on a level of an infraction. It's also been very helpful to communicate with families what those expectations are and where that falls. Ben Franklin started a student council this year, and part of the feedback that students gave us was really wanting even more clarity, and they specifically quoted the cell phone policy and the rollout, and they're like, we want to know exactly what happens when this thing happens. So we were talking specifically around offensive language, but our students are really wanting to know, like, what is the consequence for someone if it's their first or second infraction and something has happened to me. So continuing to refine and make those improvements as we get more feedback. But from my perspective, it has made that component of my job and communicating with students and families exponentially easier and better.
And then I would just add as well, I don't disagree with that, and probably linking back to what Missy said too, always remembering that that character code of conduct and supports is about a resource that is a guiding tool, right? It's not necessarily a flow chart. It's not always an if-then kind of procedural manual, but does provide more clarity. And so we always have to think about the totality of the situation, the circumstance, and other things that surround that. And probably one piece too that I just want to acknowledge in some of the work that we've been doing around our behavior reports, and we've been reporting and talking about behavior reports for years. But one of the pieces, and as you have taken a look perhaps at the metrics moving into next year's, into the revision of the strategic plan, has been the National Association of PBIS has said, kids are allowed to have 0 or 1 major behavior incident a year, because that's what's developmentally appropriate, and that's our opportunity to teach and to help correct some of those pieces. And then PBIS says 2 to 5 is where we kind of talk about those kids that might need something a little bit more of that tier 2 or that strategic intervention. And then for kids who have 6 or more of those major behavioral incidents in the year, that's when we need to start thinking about intense interventions. So when we look at the data from Fargo Public Schools this year of our students and the number of students who fall into those buckets, over 94% of our students are in that 0 to 1 bucket. And that is really something to celebrate and to acknowledge. We know that there are kids in these other buckets that we are going to continue programming for and trying to help teach skills and close those gaps, but we can't lose sight of the fact that over 94% PK-12 are in that 0 to 1 category.
I'll just add to that also that probably is one of our number one recommendations out of this committee is that we need a refresher on the code of conduct of majors and minors. One of the pieces I feel has shifted in our district with the code of conduct is I even feel there's some frustration that has been relieved between admin and teachers, because it's a clear place to look and say, okay, minor, classroom teacher, here's strategies I can help you with to take care of this yourself. Majors is handed over to a principal to make that decision and follow through. But we are getting useful data now because it's classified in a way that we can look at it in a better way. So I personally feel it has been a game changer for how we are working through some things.
Great. Any other questions or comments on this? Okay, well, thank you so much for prioritizing this work and making our district safer. I really appreciate you being here and sharing this with us. So now it is time to move on to the consent agenda, and I will look for a motion. Robin?
I move approval of the consent agenda without item 6I.
Second.
With the HC addendum, if you'd like that as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion from Robin and a second from Nikki. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposition, same sign. That motion passes 9-0. Okay, so for business, our first item is memo 117. And Shelby, will you be presenting that to us? Okay, thank you. I don't think your mic is on. Can you turn that on? Thank you.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay now? Perfect. Thank you so much for letting me be here tonight. As you can see, there are 3 proposals that I would like feedback on. We have, for the last few years, been under contract with AMN Healthcare regarding virtual speech services. Historically, we have had 4 virtual therapists that we've contracted with AMN.
Hang on a second. I think we're on 17.
Oh, I don't have anything to present, no, outside of what is in our agenda. Yeah, I'm just reading our notes.
Can we start
Yeah.
with memos 117?
You want to start with 117? Okay. Yes, please. 117 is in regards to our district level C self-contained classroom. So also, similar to what I was going down with our virtual SLPs, we've been under contract with Full Circle Academy for the last several years to contract a staff member to provide in-person services at Lewis and Clark Elementary for some of our most vulnerable learners in the district. This individual has been contracted to be a certified special ed teacher to provide special ed services for students who require an LREC setting or spending less than 40% of their time in the general education setting. So our contract came up. We had contracted for 1 year with the option of continuing the contract for 2 additional years, which we did. Things have been going very well in that setting, but we came to the end of our contract. This winter, late winter, early spring, that required me to put a request for proposal forward to obtain bids to look at covering the cost of that certified teacher for an additional year with the option of continuing that contract for 2 years. As you can see in Memo 117, based on our screening results and our rubric, I am proposing that we move forward with contracting with Full Circle Academy to provide that certified special education teacher for that classroom setting. What questions does the board have for me?
Greg?
So, ideally, I think we'd like to fill this position with a full-time staff who's employed by FPS.
Yes, that is correct.
There was, we'll just call it a to-do 3 years ago when we started this.
Yeah.
What have we done in the last 3 years to try to move away from an outside contract? And this question's probably more for human capital than you, but.
Yeah, I can try to address that, Dr. McKenna, and feel free to jump in with additional information. So over the course of the last 3 years, we have looked at providing the additional pay opportunity for our special educators. We started at $6,000 of an additional pay. That was decreased to $3,000 this last contract revision. That is one thing that we've done for that retention and recruitment of staff. Additionally, we have posted that position in the past, and that resulted in a failed search. Currently, with the new HC addendum that I just reviewed, we are currently sitting at 20 openings in the area of special education. This is an extremely difficult position to fill. And so that's why I moved forward with the RFP to try to decrease the amount of positions that I was required to fill. We continue to provide training, provide support, really looking at what does it mean to retain and recruit special educators and speech and language pathologists, and I will just include counselors within that. But what I'll tell you is nationwide, these are very difficult positions to fill, and I have an obligation to ensure that I am meeting the needs of students as well. So how do I weigh those two options out? While desiring to have all of our staff under FPS contract, that is what I would like as well. But recognizing that every year we continue to have openings in the area of special education. Dr. McKenna, is there anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I would like to, all of these positions ideally would be hired as FPS employees. There's no doubt about that. Additionally, to answer Greg's question, we have put in the most robust parent-to-teacher pipeline in the state of North Dakota. If you take everybody else and combine them, they don't have as many in their pipeline teachers as we do. We're working with every one of our universities to recruit their students for all of our positions, and more luck with most of them in general ed than there is in special education. But at the end of the day, when you do all of that and you post a position and you don't have viable applicants, then you have to go to Plan B, because there's no plan that allows a vacancy or a sub to be in those positions if we cannot hire somebody. I will tell you that the parent-to-teacher pipeline is going to be a great solution, but that doesn't, you don't earn and learn overnight like we're having now from the implementation in that. Now are when people are starting to graduate, and most of them, a good chunk of them do have special education. So that's what we've really been working on. It's a state and national challenge. We're also, as Dr. Steiner is working with us, writing 5 very robust grants, starting with our Kids in School and Educator Rising, our parent-to-teacher grant, working on having lab schools and FPS to really train up applicants that can apply for these positions. So not just this position, but every single position that we want in FPS. We don't ever want to contract up. We want somebody to be part of Team FPS, but when that doesn't work, then this is the solution.
And to just plus on what Dr. McKenna stated, I'm a proud Minot State grad as well as University of North Dakota grad. I've presented at both universities regarding our need to fill positions, particularly positions that serve our most vulnerable learners or our students who spend less than 40% of their time in the general ed setting. I go to job fairs and I go places and I tell people I'm the coolest boss you'll ever work for. So far, I haven't been able to fill, but I'm working on it. Other questions regarding Memo 117?
Was there not an initiative to train up existing teachers with SPED certifications as well?
Yes, with our ESSER funds, we did have regular ed teachers who accessed and got the praxis. And through our RIF process this year, teachers then, if they had dual licensure, were offered SPED positions. As we went forward, I think one of the pieces is kind of like moving parts, and Jeff can kind of go to that. There is some fear about being a special education teacher. So we can transfer someone, but they also have the right to apply then if any openings come forward. So we haven't found that. I guess we learned something valuable, that just getting the license is not enough. The other thing that we've noticed is some of our positions do require experience, and some of our people that are switching over, like a para, that some of these positions are not right for them to start. And so we're kind of figuring that out together as we go forward, but it has been tricky.
And this particular, or this position particularly is a position where we really individualize the instructional opportunities for our students. And it's allowed these students to remain in their home building, to continue to build a relationship with neighborhood peers. As we look at moving forward into middle school and high school, that is, there's a lot of data and research around the impacts of our learners regarding both their ability to engage with their neurotypical peers and engage in settings where they're going to see those peers at the grocery store or in the neighborhood. And so that is really our goal with this particular position.
May I make a motion?
Oh, sure.
I'd like to move that we accept Full Circle Pediatric Solutions proposal for special education teacher for level C, self-contained district classroom for the 2026-27 school year, and issue a contract accordingly.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Robin and a second from Nikki. Is there any other discussion or questions? Nikki? Nikki and then Namal.
Thank you. Shelby, just a quick question, if my memory serves me right. This is a required position that we are obligated to provide to our students, correct?
It is a required position.
So just for those who may be watching and may not live, breathe, eat, and sleep this, if we do not provide this, if we do not make this work in one form or fashion, what is the end result?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We are required. There's, I believe, 7 learners in that classroom setting this year. We are looking at 9 to 10 learners in that classroom setting next year. These are students who have IEPs. That is a requirement of the federal government that we provide the services as outlined on those students' IEPs. I'm required to do it regardless. And so if this position was not approved by the board, I would need to look at my current staffing structure and look at how can I make this work? What are the current positions that I have open? What are current positions I have filled that I could do transfers to ensure that this is being provided? That would result most likely in an overload situation in moving forward. Also, I think to Associate Superintendent Eisner's point, we do see folks that don't maybe have the heart to work with this population of students. And there are certainly a number of jobs available that they could look for and apply for outside of this position.
Go, Greg, or sorry, Jeff.
Yeah, and one thing that I neglected to add is that if approved, this doesn't mean we stop looking for our own FPS person, right? This doesn't mean, okay, now we pull the posting, we stop looking. Our goal is to continue while we have this bridge in place and provide these required services to kids, staff members that can join our FPS team.
Thank you. Namal, did you have something to say?
I do. Maybe not a lot. I just have a quick question. Maybe it might be both of you guys. I see that, the Full Circles, the hourly rate is $80 per an hour. So what is the FPS hourly rate?
Oh, Dr. McKenna, I'm going to look at you. I think that would really depend on the contract year of the individual that was hired. I don't know if I could answer what a daily rate or an hourly rate would be. It would really depend on what is the level of years of service that individual has that would look at where would they fall on our teacher matrix. Dr. McKenna?
Yeah, of course, our teachers would be paid at a daily rate, an annual salary. The challenge with us not being able to find somebody our own is there is that premium that you are paying the institution that also has to pay the person. And so if you were to hour this out, I'm sure it is, probably more than what we would be able to pay our staff. But it wouldn't be probably more than what they would get if they would be an FPS employee with all the benefits and the daily rate they would get as a teacher. So it all depends on years of experience. And then, of course, the whatever special ed stipend that we continue or would push through our next negotiation cycle.
Okay, Tara, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just want to clarify for the record, we are hiring a vendor. We aren't hiring an individual employee. So as Jeff alluded to, our payment doesn't go to a person, it goes to a company. So there is no way to compare without taking out that overhead, what the amount would be if it were a Fargo Public Schools employee.
Okay, so it would be different then.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, so I was just trying to understand because maybe there's a reason why they're not applying. Maybe because they feel like maybe it's less money. So the more we trying to have a explanation of why, and maybe they will have an understanding now of it. So that's why I'm asking.
Okay, do we have any other questions or comments about this memo? Are we ready to take the vote? All right, Anne Marie, please call the roll.
Clark,
Yes.
Day,
Yes.
Gullickson,
Yes.
Jason Nelson,
Yes.
Kristen Nelson,
Yes.
Robin Nelson,
Yes.
Olenberger,
Yes.
Berkland,
Yes.
Christensen Meinier.
Yes, and that motion passes 9-0. Okay, so we're going 117 to 118 and then down to 116 because I just put it on the bottom of the list when we pulled it. So
Thank
I
you.
apologize for the
No,
confusion.
Thank you. I apologize for, I guess I was most excited to talk about the SLP one.
It's okay. Well, you're going to have to wait for 116.
Okay, well, I'm
That's-
also very excited.
We'll save the best for last.
I'm also very excited about memo number 118 regarding the clinical based ABA classroom. So historically, Fargo Public Schools, for students who require a more restrictive setting, within my world, it is called an LRE, or Least Restrictive Environment Level D. Within the federal government, they have outlined that least restrictive environment. In the state of North Dakota, we identify it through A, B, C, and D. If you have questions about which each one of those means, I'd love to talk about it. Shoot me an email or come find me. But for students who require that LRED, so a separate setting, but as comparable to our Explorer Academy, where we are lucky enough to have an LRED setting within Fargo Public Schools. This particular group of students require clinic-based ABA services, so applied behavior analysis. These are students with characteristics associated with autism spectrum disorder that require very individualized, specialized programming. Historically, the district has sent these students outside of the district. We've had to find outside providers who will provide this service at a cost to the district. I started this plan, a couple years ago and was able to have it come to fruition this year through this RFP process, where we would put out a request for proposal to contract with a company to provide these services in-house. So what the goal of this RFP is to, with board approval, is to have a contracted staff member and behavioral supports, have a separate classroom at our Explorer Academy to provide services for students who require that clinic-based ABA service. Similar to the previous discussion of Memo 117, the intent behind this is to contract with a company for very specialized instruction for students who require that level of support that historically we have sent outside of the district to other providers to ensure that we're meeting the needs as outlined on their IEPs.
Sorry, Ally, you got a question? Oh, you want to make the motion? Okay. Okay.
To read the right words here, sorry. I propose that we accept the Full Circle Pediatric Solutions proposal for a clinical applied behavior analysis services for the 26-27 school year and issue a contract accordingly.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Ally and a second from Namal. Any discussion? Go
And
for
I
it.
also want to add this too. Sorry.
Okay.
So, as the Explorer Academy liaison, I've had the opportunity to see this proposal fully in practice. So, meeting with the teachers and the staff in that building, there has been an invaluable sharing of knowledge and services by bringing in Full Circle Academy into this building. And just really, the word invaluable, I think, is what I'll just continue to say about it. And I would just really encourage my fellow board members to help provide this service for our students. It keeps them here in Fargo with their peers and things like that. So just happy to, and thank you for bringing this forward.
Thank you.
Great. Melissa?
Yeah, I just have a question. So are these services only available to students that are in the age group of the Explorer Academy, or is it something that like beyond 8 could
Yeah.
access or?
Yeah, so right now we are targeting students in that kindergarten through 8th grade level, primarily kindergarten through 5th grade. That's really the population that we've identified who we historically have had to send out to external agencies for services. My hope is to always continue to build on programming. Obviously with, Fargo Public Schools staff, that is my goal. But my goal and my job is to ensure that we are providing a full continuum of services for our students who are served on IEPs. Right now, our group of learners just happen to be kindergarten through 5th grade. That's the age group that we are targeting. With that being said, we continue to expand and explore opportunities to provide services to other age group students as well. And those are things that I'm having discussions with other people regarding our students who are moving into high school and how do we serve their needs as well.
All right, other questions or comments on this memo? Greg?
Without Jackie being here, I don't know if we're going to get a really good answer, but I'm wondering if anyone has just a general ballpark of what our revenues per student are
Maybe you
that would fall into this population, and how staggeringly short is it of this 96,000 per student per year?
So Shelby, they're asking what's our high cost reimbursement? What are we typically getting for students that are being served in the Explorer Academy?
Yep, that's a great question. So within the state, when we submit, and I recently did this for the Explorer Academy for the governor's office. So what we look at is that we receive slightly over $10,000 of ADM per learner. So when we look at that 95,000, that 10,000 comes to us as a district for each learner throughout the district, all 11,000 plus students. We also receive a 0.888, I believe, additional pay for students who are identified on IEPs. That comes about to 1,000. So now we're, deduct that 10, additional 11. And then for students who services would be 4 times the cost of that ADM, we can submit for a high-cost disability. So that looks at an additional $30,000 that we can take off that we do receive back from DPI regarding our students. Many of the students who we are talking about in this would fall into that high-cost disability range, and that's work that we do to submit to DPI and then provide that reimbursement.
And Jackie shared with me, we have paid, as of last Wednesday, $147,000 this year for those services because it's an hourly rate.
Total, and this is per student. That in front of us, the proposal is almost 100,000 per student, but total for all of our students was just north of 100,000. Oof.
Yeah, we're not anywhere near even.
Okay,
Yeah.
Robin?
And I think what you're getting at, thank you, we are required to teach all these students, both constitutionally and morally. And with IDEA, it is woefully underfunded by our feds. So when you say DPI is paying these out, a lot of these are federal dollars being meted out by DPI.
Yes.
And so feds should be paying 40% of the cost of educating a special needs student. And that number continues to lower. I started at 16% when I started on the board, and maybe it's hovering around 13. So all of those dollars that are not provided by the feds are made up by our state in our per pupil formula. What you spoke to was the weighted per pupil formula with your 0.888. So we are drastically underfunded for special education, not only through our state, but through our federal government.
That is correct.
Thank you for letting me get on that soapbox. Is that what you were getting at, Greg? Thank you.
I will gladly jump on that soapbox with you any day of the week. Yes, it's, I've spent my career in the area of special education, which has historically been underfunded since I started in 2002.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, let's call the roll. Day?
Yes.
Gullickson?
Yes.
Jason Nelson?
Yes.
Kristen Nelson?
Yes.
Robin Nelson?
Yes.
Ollenberger?
Yes.
Berkland?
Yes.
Clark?
Yes.
Christensen Meinier?
Yes. That motion passes 9-0. All right, let's go backwards to memo 116.
All right, thank you. This is the one that I started with. So if you remember when I first initially started, we have contracted for the last 3 years with AMN Healthcare regarding contracted speech and language services. The bulk of those services have occurred virtually. We were able in the 25-26 school year to contract an in-person SLP, but they are a contracted provider through AMN. We came to the end of our contract length with AMN, same thing as the previous one that I talked about. We had an initial contract for 1 year with the option of renewing for 2 years, which we did so. Through this process, the goal was to continue to provide high-quality instructional opportunities to our students as a requirement by law. And how can we continue to do that as we continue to face a shortage of speech and language pathologists? So that's what this memo outlines, is moving forward with those providers. I think both Dr. McKenna and I would state that it would be our desire to contract with FPS employees. That would be absolutely my desire. I got one ready in about 5 years. My daughter is going into speech and language pathology. So, I mean, I haven't offered her a contract, but maybe, maybe Dr. Saar, who is our assistant director, would be able to offer her a contract in 5 years. It is a very critically short-staffed position, and we just have to continue to provide those services to our students. And so this is my proposal in moving that forward as we have the last few years.
All right, can I get a motion? Or did you want to add something? Okay. Go ahead, Melissa.
I move that we accept the AMN Allied Services LLC proposal for speech language services for the 2026-27 school year and issue a contract accordingly.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Melissa and a second from Jason. All right, any conversation? Allie?
So I know that speech language, we heard from them at our last board meeting, and they shared with us really around compensation was really one of the major drivers, right? They're choosing private practice versus choosing a path in education. We heard a lot of feedback when we tried to remove, if you will, the speech language teachers from the teaching contract. And I know that was one of the core things that you had worked on, Dr. McKenna, in terms of that did we do the wrong thing? Like, are we still having to go because we can't fill these positions? And now I don't have Jackie here to run the numbers, but I would assume that it's probably costing us more money to do it this way than it is to be able to hire them. And if we would have moved them off of the teacher contract, we would have been able to do more compensation based upon target market kind of analysis.
Yeah, so what I will tell you is that unlike, my background is being a special education teacher. Speech and language pathologists have the opportunities to work birth to death, they like to say. They have the opportunity to work clinic-based, to work in schools, to work in hospitals. There's many more opportunities for employment for our speech and language pathologists as comparable to myself as a special education teacher. Oftentimes, we see our candidates who are going through their undergrad and then immediately into their graduate level programs. It is a requirement that they obtain their graduate level degree prior to working in any sort of employment, as opposed to me, who I got my bachelor's, worked for a couple years, and then went on and got my master's degree. So what we see is that there are options out there. Our clinic-based providers, who I talk to frequently, they're able to provide additional compensation opportunities that within the district, our teacher contract does not allow us to do. So that is something that we face. You heard from Jill and Krista and Marnie last month. Those are things that we have to face. Now, in direct opposition, we have a pretty great calendar to work on. And so that does look different than if you worked at a clinic or a hospital or something like that. So it's really about how do we continue to recruit staff and retain the ones that we have. Dr. McKenna and I have had a couple of conversations regarding this. When we did have the $6,000 additional pay, that year we were able to hire 8 speech and language pathologists. It was frankly unheard of. It was super exciting. Unfortunately, since we have reduced that additional pay opportunity, we have seen 7 of those 8 individuals leave to go to other employment. So compensation does matter, absolutely. I think also analyzing the workload. We have seen some shifts in North Dakota Medicaid this year that has put on some additional requirements of our folks who can bill Medicaid services. Speech and language pathologists are our primary billers that have added some additional workload. So how do we really manage that compensation piece with also that workload? And those are things that I'm really working on to improve for next year. Dr. McKenna, would you like to add more to that?
Yeah, I would only like to add that we met with them as recently as this afternoon as well, and we've been collaboratively working with them on as robustly as we can, how do we get SLPs in the market that we're working in currently? So we have a great working relationship with that team, and we got some Dr. Fremstead and Shelby and I got some good ideas from them today, and we're continuing to brainstorm how we can get out of this situation that we're currently in right now.
I think Dr. Steiner, you had some information to
Yeah,
add.
so Ally, you had asked about the cost right now. As of again last Wednesday, 465,000 is what we've spent in contracted SLP services. So I don't know, we certainly would be ahead most likely if we could find the people ourselves. You know, the issue also lies in any time then that you have a current SLP that has to take leave, then that we're at the will of the market. And again, this is with special ed guys. I mean, you heard the number, 20 openings. We're the end of May. The school year's almost done. That's dire. Unfortunately, I don't know. This is the model that is starting to happen throughout the whole country because people cannot find people. It is sad.
Yeah, it is. And like I said, 24 years in the profession, I of course love it. I think that what we continue to see, and we heard our safety committee friends talk about it, and I think maybe Robin, you addressed it, that 8 years ago we were seeing students' behaviors, and it is a hard job. I certainly love it, but it is a hard job. And so how do we continue to support our current staff and also really focus on those recruitment and retention activities? I, am passionate about ensuring that we are providing high quality instructional opportunities for each student in our district and for our students who are identified and served on IEPs.
Okay, do we have any other questions or comments? Greg?
Do we have, I don't know if it was part of the proposal or proposed contract with this particular vendor or not, but do we know if we're guaranteed to have someone in person providing these services, or is it kind of a wish but not a requirement, or how is that in this contract?
Yeah, that is correct, Greg. As comparable to the previous two memos that I reviewed, those I do require in person and I don't deviate from that. For our speech and language, the contracted speech and language services, I am open to virtual services. With that being said, in person is always better. And I will be the first person to say that. That is always our desire. I have worked with AMN in the past, and they know that that is our desire. And when possible, they do provide us with an in-person SLP. But unfortunately, there's just not enough SLPs in the state of North Dakota to go around. And so that does require us to have virtual providers who live in other states, but are licensed appropriately in the state of North Dakota.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
Why wasn't in person or on site part of the rubric? Like in the other ones, there was a criteria
Yep.
to at least consider that. Why wasn't it considered in here?
Yeah, because I know that there's no way I would get 4 contracted in-person SLPs. I just wouldn't be able to meet that need, and I am obligated to ensure that we're providing those services. What I also will tell you is that when we look at speech and language services, particularly articulation services, where we're working on R's, we're working on TH sounds, that service can be provided in a virtual format much easier than when we are working with a student who requires hand over hand guided instruction, as we have noted in the other 2 memos and those proposals. So it is easier to provide virtual services. What I will say is it is not optimal, and I will never say that it is an optimal way to provide services. but it is more doable than for our students who require that very individualized instructional opportunities.
Okay, Missy?
I'll just add to Shelby and I have worked through numerous contracts. We have ended up on the short end of the stick. So a vendor will say they can, and then we give them a certain amount of time and they don't have anyone for us. Now we've put off services another month. And then we have to go through this process again because the state of North Dakota is very clear about the process for hiring outside for an RFP. So the amount of compensatory that you'd have to then make sure you make up is also taken into consideration. But I will say that I was surprised when we put out our nursing bid. Majority, we said we wanted in person on there. Over half of them came in saying they'd offer virtual. So people are hoping, in a sense, we'll consider it, even though we said that also.
Most recently, I put in an RFP this winter that you guys approved. Upon your approval, I moved forward with a company and I said, great, I want your candidates to start on Monday. This was a Wednesday. They were unable to meet our timelines. I'm not proud of the fact of how I reacted. I did make the provider cry, and that's not something I'm proud of. I was extremely frustrated that they assured me that they could provide this within a very short turnaround, and they could not. So that's also why I put out these bids this time of year. So I am lucky enough to have all summer to work through this process in case we do run into any hiccups.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions or comments? Okay, let's go ahead and call the roll.
Gullickson.
Yes.
Jason Nelson.
Yes.
Kristen Nelson.
Yes.
Robin Nelson.
Yes.
Olenberger.
Yes.
Berklin.
Yes.
Clark.
No.
Day.
Yes.
Christensen Minear.
Yes. And this motion passes 8-1. Okay, Shelby, thank you so much for being here, sharing your expertise and your passion for our students.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And please don't hesitate to reach out if additional questions are required.
Thank you. Okay, we are now moving on to our board reports. The first item under here is Memo 119, which is our board outside liaison assignment review. Hopefully you had a chance to look through this before today's meeting. It looks like all of the liaison assignments except for health insurance were recommended to continue. However, Nikki, I think you did note that the presence is actually really quite appreciated. I guess I was planning that we would still continue with that unless you had like a major objection to it or somebody else did.
I don't have a major objection. It's probably good data for us to have, most of which I understood because I have a background in insurance, but it is a lot of the, it's a lot of the real true work of what happens when you're trying to process and choose with health insurance. And I don't know if it's of a good use of a board member's time. It's certainly good for awareness. It might be an unpopular decision because I felt that once they do their work, then it moves on to planning for their review. So I think we could step out of it if we wanted to, but I wouldn't fight it if you want to keep it. It's good information to have. I just question the use of time.
Okay. Melissa, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, so 2 years ago, when I was also the negotiations chair, I was on the health insurance committee, and I really valued the conversations we were having, and then just knowing that there was going to be an increase in price coming up and how that could impact what we were offering, and which we don't have a lot of control over. So I found it valuable. I don't have an insurance background though, so a lot of it was new information for me and learning about the processes. So I liked having it because I think there's 2 committees that we have internally that can benefit from the information that the health insurance committee has.
Okay, so we're not actually taking any action on this, so I appreciate the conversation if people want to add conversation. I think this is something that governance could review if we wanted to delve into it a little bit more, since there's not any action on this. It's really just a memo, but I appreciate your input. Did you want to add something?
Not on the health insurance, but I see Melissa's comments here on the Native American Commission. I guess I would be hesitant to continue that moving forward just because it has been dissolved from the city perspective. I, again, appreciate Melissa's comments on that they want to continue that partnership. I just don't know that it would necessarily be valuable for a board member's time to continue to serve on that.
I will mark that as something for governance to discuss. Go
And
ahead.
I would say that board members, that was my favorite committee ever to serve on, by the way, but the board is no longer a voting member either, if that's correct. Something to add during governance conversation.
I did want to put out though that we were essentially invited back on, and I also put, like, at least for the next year, I think we should see what it looks like. My understanding is that the city will also have a non-voting liaison with the newly formed Native American Commission. I loved it because we have a really active Native American education program, and I think it felt like a really nice blend of learning about that. So I understand your hesitation because I shared it. I just think that at least for the next year, it would. And I'm sorry, I know we're not making
okay.
action, but I want to get this out there.
Not a problem.
And I'm happy to discuss at governance as well, but I also served on that committee and I found it really helpful in understanding perhaps what our Native students are working with and things that impact them. So I would support, at least for the following year, we could always reevaluate, but it is informative.
Okay, so thank you for that feedback. So we will take this back to governance. We'll take a deeper dive into this. Okay, the next thing is moving on to our committee liaison and correspondence reports. And Robin, can I start with you?
Certainly. It was a week of Horace Mann on May 13th. My brother and I, who attended Horace Mann grades K through 6, toured the building for the last official time. And then most of us attended the Horace Mann ground turning ceremony, right? Shout out to Anne Marie and her team. Of course, everything was flawless. And I want to give also a special shout out to President Christensen. Her presentation was in true teacher style. It was fun, and she got the kids involved, and we need to work on some rhyming skills. On May 18th, I met with the governor's representative here in Fargo. We discussed some K-12 funding, among other things. I did follow up with Dr. Steiner on that. Our next GAC meeting is June 22nd at noon. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg?
I just attended the Horseman groundbreaking event.
Thank you. Melissa?
Yes, on May 18th, I attended the all high school level band concert at North, which is always a treat. And then also attended the Horseman groundbreaking. And then I just wanted to give a reminder that our negotiations committee meeting is this Thursday at noon.
Thank you. Kristen?
Yeah, I also attended the groundbreaking last Friday. It was a chilly but fun afternoon. I did want to bring up something kind of cool that FYI is doing this week at all the high schools. They're doing a get out the vote tabling, and I think I mentioned this last time, but they have an engagement piece with our spinny wheels, and they put questions on them. So I'm going to read a couple questions that they have thought out that I just thought were really good examples of trying to get their fellow students engaged in local civic affairs. Name one of the government bodies that you can elect candidates to at Fargo's primary this year.
Oh, nice.
How many commissioners does the Fargo City Commission have? If you could implement one policy change in Fargo, what would it be? And amongst others, if you had to run for a position on the Fargo City Commission, Fargo Parks Board, or Fargo School Board, which one would it be and why?
Nice.
Yes, so that's my update.
Okay, Allie?
Yes, so my apologies for my absence at the Horseman groundbreaking. I had a work trip that I was not able to adjust, so I was bummed to miss it, and you guys all looked great with your shovels and your shirts, and it all looked super fun, and I was sad to miss it. So I was able to attend the panel discussion at Fargo South with DPI. It was really informative. We met with the principals and we met with staff. It was really a great opportunity for our new DPI, Levi Bachmeyer, to learn a little bit about Fargo Public Schools, the things that we had going well, and some of the different programs that we have. Obviously, we had questions around funding, and we did have a chance and an opportunity to actually advocate specifically for special education funding, as well as talked a little bit about transportation barriers as well. I also then moved from Fargo South then over to Explorer Academy, where both Lieutenant Governor Strinden and Governor Kelly Armstrong and his wife joined us for a tour of the Explorer Academy. It was a wonderful afternoon. It was an all-day FPS event for me, so I was really grateful to be a part of all of that. And just a special shout out to all of the teachers and educators and staff in our buildings as we are wrapping up the school year. I know that with the weather being nice and the kids are anxious and everybody wants to be outside and having fun, just hang in there for another week. And thank you for a great school year.
Thank you. Jason?
I attended the groundbreaking, and that's all I have.
Thank you. Nimal?
I attended the groundbreaking. I guess I'm gonna go big tonight. The groundbreaking, never mind. Let's just say the Horace Man.
Okay.
Sound good?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nikki?
Thank you. May 19th, the Health Insurance Committee met. Of course, as you've heard others mention, we attended the Horace Mann ground turning. Today, I listened to the NSBA Policy Hour, discussed teachers as leaders with Congressman Brad Schneider. And then, of course, like I'm sure many of us have, the opportunity to attend several graduation open houses. And I think that's right up there with me with attending and handing out diplomas. It's just a real point of pride to see these families come around these students and how excited they are, and to take those next steps. And then CEA did not meet in May, and I'm thinking unless we have a fairly robust agenda, we may not meet in June due to the election and reorganization in July. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And for my report, I'll share that since we met last, President Laura Christensen and I had our monthly summit. I also attended the Horace Mann groundbreaking, and I learned that I should tell the kids the words are supposed to rhyme instead of just assuming they'll figure it out. That might have helped. Also want to share that if you didn't get a shovel, you can take one. So that's what those shovels are over there. So if you did not take home a shovel, please take them, because otherwise Anne Marie is probably going to have to haul them back upstairs. No, or they're just going to be permanent fixtures in our boardroom. So please take a shovel. Couple reminders. Please remember that your graduation assignments are coming up soon. So if you have any questions or conflicts with that, please make sure you reach out to Anne Marie. If you're not in touch with your school, you should be. So make sure that that is happening. And then the last reminder is Anne Marie did send out a doodle poll for a training session that will either take place in August. So please complete that. Our next regular meeting is June 9th, and it will be at the South High School auditorium. So please do not put yourself on autopilot and come here. Make sure you go to South High. It is 7:07 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned.